Hello, everybody. It's JP here, Jean-Pierre, and I'm going to talk about building great relationships with your team and beyond. Something that is kind of important to remember as a product manager is that you'll be working with people, and it's very collaborative role, and building that relationship is going to be a lot of leverage for you to be effective as a product manager. So quickly about myself, I've been doing product management for 7 years. The last 3 years I've been at INTERCOM. I've also started a couple of companies. I'm actually right now working on a new product. And despite my very French name, Jean-Pierre, I'm not French. I'm living in the west coast of Ireland, originally Dutch, born in Switzerland, raised in Barcelona with father Portuguese. So it's all over the place. So you can also call me JP. My Twitter handle, hello Jean-Pierre. Feel free to reach out for any question or like a follow-up discussion based on the contents. Something I always say is that product management is about direction and alignment. We have plenty of tools, frameworks, processes, talking about direction, like how do we validate, how do we prioritize or strategize, but there's not much about alignment. It's kind of like this fuzzy, abstract term, but yet direction without alignment means that it's not going to be executed, or you won't have like that impact you want actually with that direction if nobody's like motivated, inspired, rallied behind the direction where you're heading with the product. And the reason I want to talk about this is because when I joined INTERCOM, I felt completely an imposter. I actually joined with already some years of product manager experience, but I was hired to be joining the messenger team, which is like the live chat icon that you see on INTERCOM. Like many websites have this live chat thing in the corner. And when I joined, there were some changes in people internally, and I was offered the team for developer platform, which is the API team. It's fairly technical because it's APIs for third-party developers to build integrations on top of the platform. And I didn't have a clue about what an API was. I knew it from a theoretical point of view, but not how to do product for APIs, like designing an API or measuring the impact of an API. So I felt very confident on my first days at INTERCOM. And as a result of this, I had to like heavily rely on people around me, lean on like building those relationships to be able to like do my job effectively as a product manager. Fast forward 3 years later, we grew to a couple teams, we're a group. The platform itself became a cornerstone of the strategy of INTERCOM, like a proper B2B platform. We launched an app store. We had 10,000 weekly active apps using those APIs. And even like get to a point where our team became like a high-performing team. And our directors were like asking like, what kind of like lessons do we have to like share, replicate this to other parts in INTERCOM? So I want to talk about like relationships, because this was for me like, despite the challenge of not knowing the domain of APIs or the developer tooling or developer audience, I had to like lean on those relationships to be able to like build product and like be effective as a product manager. So I'll be talking about how you can navigate in the organization. And think of an organization or company like as a network of information and people. And I always say that product managers are like diplomats. Like you have a lot of influence. Well, you need to get a lot of influence. There's a lot of like, I have a fly flying around, so apologies for this little wave. But a lot as a product manager is gaining the trust, influence, advocating, educating, evangelizing within the organization. And as a diplomat, you need soft power. You don't have authority. You don't have the like direct reports, or like you have to very much convince people in a very subtle and softly manner. So I'll be sharing 3 principles that I think that will help you build great relationships, not just with your team, but also peers around you. And those principles, I'll try to be as practical as possible, because alignment in general is a very abstract concept. But with those 3 principles, you'll be able to align stronger through those relationships. So the first principle is about connecting with each individual in your team personally, maybe beyond the team, not just like engineers and designers you work with, but also like other peers and stakeholders around you. One of the tools you can have is the one-on-one. And I think like many PMs underrate the one-on-one, like the actual quality time you spend with all the people you work with. Often I see like meetings being like in large groups, like recurring things, very transactional, but there's not the time spent on like really going out for coffee, talking about life, what's top of mind, what they're up to, what is challenging or struggling, what's next with them, and how you can help them. This like photo here is probably like where I spent a lot of money in coffees. Like, I guess like twice a day I was probably going there for coffee and had this timed loop, 30 minutes to just have like my one-on-one with whoever I needed to like catch up or sync up with. And there's different cadences for one-on-ones. Like you could have some people you want to meet on a weekly basis or bi-weekly, and while others maybe quarterly or monthly. But many PMs, for example, don't like even have a one-on-one with their engineers in the team. And that's like already like a missed opportunity to like gain information about projects that are on flight, about building trust with your peers. And even if it's like on your team, it could be even beyond your team, like maybe somebody in customer success that you haven't spoken for a long time, or like some manager in a support team. And important to like just listen and see like what's going on in their world, in their sphere, and for then you to be able to like also like spend quality time with them. The second part of like how you can build good connections is also to be proactive. Take that initiative. As a product manager, your biggest leverage is being able to influence others around the direction, right? So you have to bond, you have to have fun with the people you work with. For example, pick a couple of engineers and go to a conference together and have a good time. In this example, like even with the engineering manager I worked with, we went with our directors, respective directors, the director of product and the director of engineering, and we went to Nordic APIs in Stockholm as a conference. And the contents were all right, we did some networking, but that was not the most important. It was actually going for dinner, spending some time in the lobby, getting excited about what we've done or new ideas, reflecting on like what we learned. That time is very important to spend together with your managers. It could be other engineers, other people. And I think that you have to create those opportunities as a PM. And the same here, put some examples with like creating the social gatherings beyond or outside of the office at time. Go for a barbecue, a picnic, some drinks, perhaps like somebody else, if you work in a larger company, is coming from a different office and maybe you can show them around. You have to be proactive to create those relationships so that you can actually be more influential as a PM. And even within the time, office time, you know, like small details like having lunch together or like going out for an ice cream is a good way to like just bond and have fun. So that will be about how you connect individually with peers that you work with, inside or outside of your team. The second principle I want to share is about creating safe spaces. And those that are familiar about creating high-performing teams have already heard about feeling psychologically safe. And that's very important if you want to create good relationships where you can get honest, real, trusting relationships that will help you to like get the respect and respect both ways and build that alignment that you need to as a PM. So first is like think about the rituals that you have as a team, and are these rituals creating those safe spaces? We had every Friday morning, every week, first hour in the morning, so it was 9:30, lean coffee. And I'll explain a bit what lean coffee is. So it was actually a great format, but it eventually replaced the retrospectives we had. Lean coffees were like For us, actually, there was a table in the photo here that we were sitting every Friday. So that was the exact spot we were. And Lean Coffee, for those that are not aware about what it is, it's just like a very structured, organized meeting where you're going to go through some topics quite productively. But it doesn't really matter about the format. Well, I'll share it anyways to like give a practical example. So the first 5 minutes would be like brainstorming topics. You vote most important topics, could be any topic. And then you just go from top to bottom. And you have a timer for 3 minutes. And you pick the first topic. And then after 3 minutes, everybody either votes like continue talking about it, extend the time, or just move on to the next topic. And it felt like a really productive way to like talk about what is top of mind with the people in the team. And I'm bringing this up because over time it replaced retrospectives, which tend to be a fairly common ritual across all teams. So, and the reason is because Lean Coffee is offered like a space to discuss problems that are beyond the weekly cadence, and it wasn't on the time that was end of the day, and it felt like very transactional and very day to day. Well, in the Lean Coffee, it felt much more like honest and open to talk about what was concerning you. So, for example, like you've been being bothered by how we did triaging issues in the last 4 weeks, and you want to raise this with the team and sort of find a more efficient way. And that hardly comes in retrospective, but it came very like naturally in a space like a Lean Coffee. And over time, we decided not to have retrospective because the purpose already served here to self-improvement. And the point here is to like find those rituals that help the team to like really have candid and honest conversations and continuously aim to be more effective as a team, and not just do the rituals that are like mandated by the common sense or the books or like the de facto rhythms or like rituals you have already in place in the company. So challenge them. Another important point is creating or fostering a culture of feedback. And that's something you might have to work with your engineering manager to like encourage the team to like really be candid and be able to like share one-on-one feedback. And that doesn't have to be only with the team. It's also with like stakeholders you work with or other people outside of the team, like managers or leaders even. And even if it's difficult and it will require a lot of like pushing and creating, it's very important to be able to like create a safe space where you can actually be candid and create a deep connection. It's the same that happens in a strong romantic relationship or a strong friendship, where you can actually be honest and just say, hey, I don't like this, or this is not working, and you have a good conversation about that. And the same happens with teams. And therefore, with this, you get better alignment. So as a PM, like it's important to like be able to know what to do when you get feedback and how to give feedback. So for example, when you receive feedback, like just take it in, listen, don't justify, avoid saying yes, but don't go defensive, just take it, accept it, and really appreciate the effort that the person has done by giving the feedback. One time I got this feedback from an engineer in the team that my recent Slack messages were a bit demoralizing. And I was being a bit like too harsh on like those messages, like fatalistic, and it didn't help with the morale. And I actually appreciated the fact that it made an effort of like setting some time, private time, and being like having the courage to like share that feedback, right? And when you give the feedback, which is also important as a PM to like other stakeholders, team members, and so on, is to like know how to give effective or constructive feedback. Share how you feel, talk about the trigger, don't label them saying you do X, but say I feel this. For example, one project I was not getting enough like updates from the technical lead, And I was feeling very anxious. So the way to approach it is like, hey, I feel anxious about the project. I need to like tell my manager about how we're doing, and I don't know where we're up to now. And it was a good way to say, hey, like in the last 2 weeks, we didn't receive any like updates. How can we like find a different way to like communicate this? And last, like also like compliment, be generous with compliments. It's always a good tool, a good way to like create those strong relationships. The third principle I'm going to talk about is fostering those strong partnerships with people around you. Like treat them like as equal co-founders. So for example, that means like assuming best intent from people around you. PMs often feel attacked or get defensive. Myself have had these periods of like where being challenged or like, and I feel like, oh, nobody understands me, and therefore like I just entrench myself more. Like I'll be more opaque and move myself away from strong voices around me. An example is when somebody comes in a company with like recurring product ideas or like feature requests. And as product managers, we kind of like obsessed about a problem, and we're very puristic on like, hey, we want to know like, this is like a solution. We've got too many features. It feels like a feature factory. All these kind of like thoughts come up when we hear a feature request. Oh my God, another one for the wish list. We're already very busy. And changing the perspective or the paradigm to think about, hey, people come with good intent. They're trying to like solve a problem here and make it easy for me. Even if that's not the case, maybe what I can do is like find out and be curious about the triggers. Like, why are they suggesting this? Why now? What's the context behind? What's the root cause? And sort of like understand like what has triggered that feature request to come to you, rather than like feeling defensive of like yet another idea to add on a backlog of ideas. Same with like when you get leadership input or feedback, it can feel also like very demoralizing. Sometimes it's very good, strong feedback, or from founders can also be another example. And I always like I've shared this, that you don't have to answer or give an answer right away. It's totally fine. Say, like, right, I'll look into this and I'll follow up with you on this question or on this subject matter. It's like a look where you just take it, appreciate that you got an input, take it, consider it, reevaluate if anything changes, and then follow up with the outcomes of like with that new input. Perhaps nothing changes and you just come back to them and say, okay, we're just going to stick with the plan. Or it changes the whole plan and we're completely going to like change direction, for example. So always assume best intent. It's not political, even if we are very much dealing with people and people have all their own interests and they're like trying to like get to influence you, but you have to like also like understand that people in the organization are like hoping for the best for the organization. This one is fairly controversial, but like sort of helping or enabling others to be or think like a product manager. If we think about strong alignment, means that a lot of the parts, a lot of things that as PM we do can be sort of like unfold and let others to take ownership on that. Because if we all aligned on the direction we want to go, then the execution are just details, administrative details to figure out, but like not what matters most is like having like that focus on like the impact and goals. So for example, like you don't have to, as a PM, write user stories or prioritize the backlog or run the projects or do the project management. If there's like very strong alignment with your peers in the team on the direction, then some of those parts can be done, shared with others, and you can empower others to take that over so that you can spend more time on the longer term and the bigger picture. So for example, and this is a photo of the marketplace team, one of the teams I work with. Our problem that we were solving was like, how can we get third-party applications get more installs by customers? And the metric we were looking at was getting more page views in the App Store listings so that more likely there's like conversion rates and installs. So the way that we approach this, like, hey, we've got a set of hypotheses here. Let's all like draw possible like bets that we want to like focus on, and we'll go through the exercise of prioritizing what we think most confidently is going to move the needle here. And that was like done alongside like with the team, like encouraging one of the engineers to take ownership in the process and like drive that, and like sort of like, okay, well, we're going to end up with a few like of these bets, and we will need to find out which is the most important one. The exercise here, like of like prioritizing together, like allowed the team to like feel more part of like the process of thinking like a product, learning from you, respecting you, and you just there to facilitate and encourage them. And as like the team matures, give up more on that and let it more go. So for example, like in a project where the designer and the lead engineer can like just take over breaking down user stories and writing those tasks. And as long as they're like super aligned on like where we want to get to, what are the principles we want to optimize for and what we don't want to optimize for, and what does success look like. And then you can sort of like help them and like make sure they're on the right track. But like over time, like, hey, maybe I don't need to write those user stories anymore. I can like let the team give the trust to the team to like handle that. Same with like roadmap. I put here like spend long time with whiteboards with your peers. Like for example, my engineering manager, like as soon as we would start road mapping, which was in INTERCOM a quarterly basis, we would just go 2 hours on a whiteboard and just trash out some thoughts. And I would go in the room and have no idea. I have like some vague ideas of what the objectives or what potential areas of problem spaces we should be looking at. We have some alignment on that, but we don't know what shape that looks like. So that meant like us spending a couple hours like on a whiteboard, like teasing out ideas and so on. And it allowed me to be very vulnerable as a product manager to my engineering manager, but also like product marketer or like partnerships in our case, like anybody that was around me, and just like have this very strong collaborative working relationships. And I felt like for me, like they were my co-founders. We all were co-founders in this team, and we all like building towards a North Star, and maybe they had a better perspective or a better way to see the problem that I actually haven't not seen until then. So letting others to do product and you being the facilitator will enable a lot of that strong relationship, strong trust, respect to foster, and therefore like you'll be more focusing on creating alignment. So just to recap on those three principles, we said like product management is about direction and alignment, and you create alignment by having this very strong or great relationships with your peers. And to build those relationships, one, like you need to connect with those individuals around you, spend quality time, take the initiative with creating those relationships, connecting with them. Second, like create safe spaces, like look at what rituals you have, like are there like real spaces where people can be honest and candid about what they worry about. And three, like foster strong partnerships, treat them as co-founders, be open to like let go part of the product management and be like as a team work more like on alignment rather than like on the details of the execution, and assume always best intent with that. So that's everything from my side. If you got questions, feel free to like, apart from like asking them now on the chat, you can also like reach out. Happy to like have follow-up calls or like any chats that you want to go deeper further on anything I talked about. Thanks for joining, and see you soon.